Hey, Razi.
Hi, Aaron.
Thanks for joining.
Oh, it's really an honor to be here. And thank you for the work that you're doing for health freedom. It's something I'm very passionate about too. Kind of has informed my career as well. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for everything you do for the naturopathic doctor medical community and for promoting naturopathic doctors. I know that, quote unquote, more mainstream doctors don't like competition, so to speak. And competition is important in health. We have found that's the best model, having competition to get to the best results and the best outcome. That's why I like the adversarial process. It's a lot more fun being at a hearing where people are going at it versus when one side's just talking, right? You're more likely to get to truth. I like hearing both sides. I would love to have the folks who don't agree with me come and sit in your chair, but they won't come here.
Right.
Anyways, with that said, we ended up connecting because the Trump administration was proposing a regulation that was going to remove the ability for students attending naturopathic medical schools.
Yes.
And we'll get into that in a minute because I bet most people don't know what that is or what the heck's that, right? To be able to get student loans. And without student loans, a lot of them just can't afford to go. It would be, it would be very detrimental to that. So I know that regulation, the comment period is now closed, and we're waiting to see the outcome. Hopefully, the Trump administration won't gut that funding. With that said, what is a naturopathic doctor? How many naturopathic doctor medical schools are there in America?
Right now, there's 7. There's 2 of the same campus in California, Bastyr, but there's only 7. At one point in our country's history, there were 20 naturopathic medical schools. We can talk a little bit about that. And right now, naturopathic medicine is only licensed in 26 states and jurisdictions. And what a lot of people don't know is that medicine is licensed at the state level, not the national level. But because the AMA has a lot of power in every state, a lot of people assume that. Interestingly enough, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but Florida, naturopathic medicine was banned in the state of Florida and other states in, I think, 1959. And it just now, the licensure bill passed the House and the Senate, and we are waiting for the governor of Florida to sign it. But there is a lot of lobbying against that. They want the governor to veto that. Mm-hmm. So that's, and we've been kind of state by state going through this over the past few decades.
So there are 7 schools, but there are 27 states that accept
that
the
license
naturopathic.
It. Yeah.
Now, a naturopathic doctor, for example, in many of the states, can they prescribe medicine?
Yes, and it just depends kind of at the state level. Some places like California, there's more of a limit and you have to work under a medical doctor. They have kind of a reduced scope. And again, it's kind of that, and I'm not really involved in that aspect of it, but there's sort of this negotiation that happens between, things like the AMA. And I want to be clear, I'm speaking for myself from history, but I'm not one of the organizations that has to go head to head with some of these organizations. But yes, there's sometimes compromises are made. Now, Arizona, where we are, has a very robust scope of practice. Even minor surgery can prescribe drugs. And here's the thing that people don't realize. Naturopathic medical education for the first 2 years is identical to allopathic, to conventional medication. Pathology, histology, pharmacology, basic anatomy and physiology, that's all the same. But it's the next 2 years where they learn actually more nutrition, counseling, drug-herb interactions, things that are really important. If somebody's choosing to see a naturopathic doctor, it's important that naturopathic doctor can understand, how things interact. So it really is, in my opinion, a more robust, well-rounded education. But my point of view isn't even to go against the other types of medicine, but it's just allow the public to choose what kind of doctor that they want to see, allow the doctor to decide what kind of education they want, what kind of medicine they want to practice. And that's why I just love the work that you're doing, because it's in a similar sphere, letting people have their rights and live their life the way they want to.
Yeah, that's critical. Giving patients choice is also really important. So naturopathic medical school, is that what we call naturopathic medical school? How many years is it?
It's a 4-year postgraduate.
So just like just like medical school.
Exactly.
For an MD or for a DO.
Correct.
So it'd be 4 years, and the first 2 years are the same.
Yes.
And the last 2 years differ in terms of?
They learn some acupuncture. They learn about botanical medicine. They learn about kind of whole person care. And there's a friend. Well, I want to talk about some of the history of it, but I can maybe talk. I did bring a little little thing here that we can look at. I don't know where I should point that to. So this is what makes naturopathic medicine so different. This is called the therapeutic order, or the naturopathic therapeutic order. And some early naturopathic doctors, Dr. Jared Zeff and Dr. Pamela Snyder, really put this together. But in conventional medicine, you start with the highest force interventions first, right? Like, okay, we see your cholesterol is like this. Let's give you a statin. Let's send you right away to get chemotherapy. They're just, your throat hurts. Let's give you an antibiotic. It's like the strongest force first.
Michael, maybe can we find that maybe online and put it up on the screen?
Okay, so I won't. Yeah.
Well, no, okay. Yeah.
So with naturopathic medicine, you first establish the determinants of health. And that also, another way of saying that is find the root cause. First look at things like your sleep, your relationships, your nutritional intake, and all of those things that set up the basic, how much sunlight do you get during the day? Things that we were called quacks for a long time ago, and now people are realizing, right? Circadian rhythm, for instance, how light affects your health. So that's
Is there a billing code for that?
For determinants of health, I don't believe so.
There's no billing code for, like, if a doctor tells you get sunlight or get good sleep, no billing code, right? Okay.
Exactly right.
I'm sorry.
Yes. I don't know what would Medicaid reimburse a doctor for that.
I don't think insurance will. Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, let's put that up on the main screen.
So then the next one here.
So you've got it right there.
Okay, great. Then you stimulate the self-healing. So this is before you use things like herbs, supplements, homeopathy, nutrition. It's first things like getting moving, addressing those, what the root causes are. And that is within what we call the vis medicatrix naturae, the healing power of nature. And that is this understanding that the body has this ordered system to self-heal. It's always
your immune system.
Your immune system, exactly.
Well, yeah. Yep.
And that it's innate, and that you don't need, that it has a lot of what it needs from nature, from food, from sunlight, from grounding, from the earth. Then you support and restore weakened systems. This is where medicines like homeopathic medicines, nutritional supplements, some people say even peptides, the herbs, these are where you start to restore those systems with something that's like more like nature pharmacy.
Trying to support the immune system.
Exactly. And allostasis, homeostasis, that's where you can react to your surroundings. Like if you get in an airplane, for instance, your body has to totally adjust because you're in a different oxygen place. There's a lot of more germs around you. And so your body kind of needs to kick in gear. And that's supporting that if there's some of those weakened systems. Then is physical alignment. This also could be like if a cyst needs to be removed, this could be massage. It could be some sort of osteopathic therapy, because that is important for, proper lymphatic flow. We're learning more about connective tissue and its role in health. Your bones have something called piezoelectric energy, that the stimulation of just movement kind of creates an electrical charge that helps stimulate healing. Then you go into natural symptom relief. So this is something like helping a fever with a natural remedy, but you're addressing the symptoms. Everything before this, Erin, you're not really looking at the symptoms yet. You're looking at the body's own foundation. Now is when we start looking at symptoms. Also in naturopathic philosophy, a symptom isn't the problem. The symptom is the red light on your dash signaling that something's wrong. And so it's very important that you don't always look at, like a fever is a good example. Fevers are important. Your body is raising your temperature to help kill a pathogen. What do we do in modern medicine? Oh, let's do this to prevent a fever or to turn off your baby's fever, turn off your child's fever. And it kind of thwarts, same with like anti-inflammatory medications, right? They've done histology studies on people with knee surgery that if they take cortisone shots, for instance, the remodeling of the tissue is just kind of erratic, and it's not that beautiful kind of symphonic pattern when you don't use something that suppresses the body. So then you have the synthetic symptom relief. So this would be, okay, if somebody's fever goes too high, then we, take a look at that. And then at the very top is high force interventions. This would be antibiotics. This would be, a biologic. This would be, sometimes medications are important. So in naturopathic medicine, we're not against medications. We're just against
starting there. They're the end.
Exactly. And it goes back to that principle of first do no harm, right? The Hippocratic Oath. What's best for the patient? And so it's a very unique paradigm that now in this post-COVID world, more and more people are kind of open to this. Interestingly, too, we used to be this publication that only served naturopathic doctors. And now more and more medical doctors, conventional doctors, DOs, PTs, they're coming and reading all the case reports because they're like N1 studies. How did this one patient with this one doctor, how did they deal with the symptomology? How did they test? What was the diagnosis? How did they treat it? And so we're seeing more of an interest because 1 in 3 people, according to the last NIH study on this, use some sort of CAM. It's what the government calls complementary and alternative medicine. So we were sort of doing this before it was cool and popular. And, we're just so glad that it's becoming more assimilated now and more respected now.
You have a journal, right?
Yes.
Called the Journal of
Applied Natural Medicine.
Okay, and it has a website? What's the website?
NDNR.com.
And that's where you have these case reports and information about naturopathic medicine.
So
is there a directory there of naturopathic doctors?
We're redoing the directory right now. So It might be up by the time they hear this. And it's naturopathic, functional, all that. But basically, so we just publish physicians that either naturopathic doctors or doctors that practice naturopathic medicine. So some functional integrative. And we publish their cases. We publish their anecdotes and their clinical pearls. So we have a digital issue every month since 2005. And 4 times a year, we publish a printed journal. And it's been, it's for a long time, we were sort of just, again, called quacks, crazy, snake oil salesmen, and, just.
Well, I have my experience in the journey that I've been through in the last decade around medical interventions is that these labels that you described, they're often try to pin it on things that don't have, and that's why I made a joke earlier, a billing code. So if there's no money in it and it's going to upend or uproot the traditional, so to speak, way of doing things where where there's billions of dollars at stake, there's a PR machine that kicks into play to discredit it. Not because they're per se bad or evil in these terms. It's just good business to take out your competition. That's how it works. That's why I say I like competition. Competition's better. And you can clearly, just looking at this, by the way, kind of reminds me the food pyramid was upside down, right? And then Bobby, Secretary kind of flipped it. I kind of feel like all of medicine should work like this. It should all be flipped, so to speak, because, when I think of the typical doctor experience, it starts at the top because high force interventions, I've never seen this before, by the way. This is great. I love this. I really love this. High force interventions are where there are billing codes. That's where they can, charge for those things typically, and maybe addressing physical ailments sometimes too, depending if they're, have a broken arm, right? But basically, everything else for the most part is not going to fit into that model. And I can certainly see why the first one, which finding root causes, is probably the most dangerous thing that naturopathic medicine as a approach to healing. It's the most dangerous thing to the establishment because finding root causes results in healing. Healing results in no more repeat customer.
And even just acknowledging that the body does have an immune system and other aspects of self-healing, and it also doesn't look at each organ system as a separate entity, right? It's like for many decades, I've been talking about the gut-brain connection, the gut-bone connection, the bone-skin connection, because of hormones that are made. Like, so the body, it's just impossible to look at one aspect of the body.
Is this even a controversial issue, honestly?
Well, I think it may be in our circles.
I mean, is it the idea that most healing, almost all healing comes from the immune system? I mean, humans go through life, for the most part, encountering endless pathogens and endless potential harms, and they don't need any medical intervention. That's all the immune system. That's their body healing itself.
I have a dear friend. He's a naturopathic doctor. He's in his 80s. His name's Charlie Cropley, and he's in Colorado. He's just such a wise man. And he explained it this way once. He said, sometimes the symptom is the cure. So take something like a hangover. When somebody has a hangover, they're sweating, they have a headache, they throw up, they have diarrhea. Well, what is your body doing? Your body is doing everything it can to purge, diarrhea, sweating. It's trying to get rid of the toxins. Your body is kicking in gear. The headache is because you've got these prostaglandins that are acting to try to heal the body and help rid it of the alcohol. You're exhausted because your body needs to rest. So what should you do? Do you plug up the diarrhea? Sorry, that sounds gross. Do you just try to stop all the symptomology? What naturopathic medicine believes is the more you suppress systems like that, the more you end up later on with dis-ease, because you're just sort of thwarting your body's immune system and its healing process. And so a fever is another example of that, Also some childhood illnesses, this is controversial, but it is in the literature that some childhood diseases like chickenpox, like measles, can protect against later cancers, such as neurological cancers. So the body is very, very wise. There's some thought that seasonal allergies are almost like a spring cleaning for your body, right? You're tearing up, you're sneezing, you're kind of cleaning things out a little bit. Now, on all of these, things can go, too far. And that's why we have this beautiful, by the way, I borrowed this particular model of the therapeutic order from the Association of Accredited Naturopathic Medical Colleges and some doctors there, like my friend Dr. Joanne Yanez. So there's different ways that people sort of illustrate it. And so I borrowed that one from her today.
The very colleges and schools they're going to try and gut by not providing the funding. By the way, these febrile, meaning having a fever, childhood infections, like you just mentioned, measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox. I actually don't know if it's controversial that if those children that have had those are less likely to have various cancers. And the reason I say that is I bring those studies up all the time when I've deposed vaccinologists, immunologists, pediatricians, and it's just often just deer in headlights. I had this one vaccinologist say to me, he said to me, "Oh, well, those are wrong." I didn't show them to him yet. I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Have you ever seen him?" He goes, "No," and he admitted he'd never seen them. I said, "So you know that they're wrong?" I said, "Well, here they are." And I gave him a whole series of these studies sitting there across the deposition like this. But except for that one dude. I mean, I've never heard anybody contest it because the literature on it is pretty consistent. When you go to PubMed and you look at those studies, and I've done it, I use them and I outline them in my book, they're consistent, not only cancers, but heart disease. Children that have had, did you know this?
I did know this, yeah.
Heart disease and certain chronic ailments. I don't know if did you know that?
Autoimmune and yeah.
The studies are pretty consistent throughout.
I'm so glad you brought this to light in your book because, I've fought with so many online trolls over the years.
I just send them the PubMed study. Say, here are the studies. Show me the ones that show these are wrong. I'm still waiting for them. I've never gotten the ones that show that they're wrong. And, they're very inconvenient facts. As I've said this a lot, which is that there could be a reason, call it God, call it nature. There could be a reason that, unlike other pathogens that have come and gone through over the eons, right? These particular ones did not.
Right.
And they could be because they confer a survival advantage. It doesn't mean they can't cause harm.
Sure.
But it could mean that overall they result in saving more lives than they tragically take, right? And they're tragic. Any death is a tragedy. As
iatrogenic.
And that what I just said generates incredible outrage, though it shouldn't. So I agree. This now I've never seen this chart before, but I did know that addressing root causes was where naturopathic doctors start, which is why when I saw the attempt to defund these schools, and I have a niece who's actually going to be a naturopathic doctor right now, so which is wonderful. I mean, she told me about everything she's learning. I'm like, wow, that's so great. Really, I mean, truly, she comes home talking, maybe we have dinner once a week, talking about how to address real root causes, something you will not hear in established medicine. And so,
the childhood illnesses that we're talking about too, there's another kind of term that's not so much used in like conventional medicine, but it's hormesis, where it's the stress on the body. I mean, think about it with kids. Stress on the body encourages growth, right? And one of the reasons kids jump around all the time is their bones are growing so fast, and that helps them grow stronger bones. Or just think when you work out that you're breaking down the muscle so it can build stronger. And there is a thought and a history to match it, like some of the studies you're talking about, that some of these stresses on the body help you have a stronger immune system, and that's hormesis. And it happens, like I brought some tomatoes from my garden for you today, and there's something called dry farming where you stress it out a little bit. You give a little less water to the plant sometimes, and it produces more like a sweeter tomato. So it's all throughout nature, this idea that stress sort of helps build resilience and strength. And I think we've been growing, some generations of humans that haven't had that. They're in a completely air-conditioned environment all the time. So they're not sweating very much. They're not moving their lymphatic system very much. They're sitting like at a desk all day. And their body just isn't, it doesn't get those same natural stresses.
So like the parallels would be stressing your muscle builds more muscle. Impact makes stronger bones, right?
Kids with pets have a stronger immune system, right? Or kids that play in the dirt.
And to your point, more exposure to certain
diversity
of like virus, bacteria, fungus, flora, whatever, they are more likely to grow, become more resilient.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've got a family member who never gets sick. He's an older gentleman in my extended family, and he's definitely does not. I don't know the right way to put this. We were at the airport not long ago, and he was there was a garbage can, and he was leaning on it with his food on the lid, eating. Like no care in the world, just doesn't care. And I remember literally thinking to myself, I mean, this is why he's going to live forever.
Right.
There's nothing that he hasn't exposed to. Now, obviously, that doesn't. I'm not saying you should run and do that, but disease can hurt people. But I think that also what the studies reflect is that you often, being exposed to a pathogen and being infected can harm, especially if you have a weakness in one of your systems. If you have a nutritional deficiency, if you were locked in a basement, had a vitamin D, if you've been overstressed and not sleeping enough, if you have something, where would that fall? Where would that fall on this chart, right?
Well, it would be like support and restore these weakened systems and establish that foundation. It's both of those really, because you have to address get outside.
Because we see that, speaking of infectious diseases, we saw that with the mortality of infectious diseases, before there was any vaccines or antibiotics to address any of that. There was any of it. The mortality just declined precipitously in developed countries where a lot of these deficiencies were addressed.
Yes. Well, and there's also, if you look at the history of some of these infections, a lot of people will argue, especially online, that everybody used to die from all these infections. But let's talk about heroic medicine and what these early medical interventions were. We're talking about lead, calomel, which was mercury, just bloodletting, a lot of like tartarian salt, which is from some other toxic metal. So in the 1700s to the 1800s, there was this very barbaric type of medicine, and it was called heroic medicine back then. In fact, George Washington died. He woke up one morning in December of 1799, I think it was, with a sore throat, and he couldn't talk very well. So these three very esteemed physicians came to him. They started bloodletting. They gave him mercury. They drained there's documents from that day. They drained 40% of his blood supply or something like that. And really, depends on if you look at source documents from the day and diaries, or you look at Wikipedia, he really pretty much died from the mercury and the bloodletting. And in fact, so a lot of these, kids were given laudanum, which is opium. So a lot of people were dying from this barbaric medicine that was happening in those days. In fact, also, I forget his name, but there was in the mid-1800s, there was a Union Army Surgeon General that he took the mercury, calomel, off the formulary for the Army, which means that's this is the formulary. These are all the drugs that we'll use, right? Okay. So he took that off, and he was court-martialed for it because he said, we are poisoning our soldiers. He was court-martialed for that. So it's we're seeing some of the same things happen. Right.
And the parallel, of course, we're not, I'm not comparing those practices necessarily to modern medical practices, but the overall same kind of forces that drove that outcome still exist, right? Which are that the entrenched establishment that has a way of doing things and that makes money doing it needs to protect the way that they do it, whether it was bloodletting then, and it's doing certain things today. Now, I'm not saying all medical practice is bad.
No.
There's incredible doctors that do incredible things, but obviously there are also problems, and the problem is when there is a problem and it gets entrenched, it just sticks away. An overriding problem is the failure to address root causes.
Yes. And, and I'm not against doctors. Most every doctor I speak to, unless they're associated with some organization, right, or institution, they really just want to do what's best for the patient. They're tired. They don't like only having 12 minutes per patient, and because of the reimbursements are so low. I have an unpopular opinion that I don't think naturopathic and functional medicine should be covered by insurance, because then you're going to make the doctor go into these 15-minute how are they going to get reimbursed by Medicare by spending an hour with a patient, going through their history, going through all the root causes? I'm not saying I have the answers there, but I was just talking with an MD who does integrative oncology, and she was like, this is absolutely what I see in treating patients with cancer. There'd be no way that she would be able to give good care according to this if she could only have these 15-minute. So it's really a difficult thing. So it's but the doctors, want to do what's best as well. So I don't blame the doctors, and I'm not against conventional medicine doctors. I just believe that there is other ways, and people should also work together.
Well, I guess it doesn't have to be in the 15, 12-minute increment model. Hey, Dr. Oz, you should reform CMS to follow this, please.
Did you know Dr. Oz has an honorary doctor of naturopathic medicine from Bastyr University? He got it in the early 2000s.
Oh, I did it.
I know, that's pretty cool.
But the billing and incentive system could be fixed.
It needs to.
It could incentivize health outcomes rather than prescribing. It could incentivize people getting better irrespective of what it is you're asking them to do, versus how much medicine or surgeries or procedures you perform in them, which unfortunately is the model now, which is why it drives towards more and more and more, and taking what are normal natural processes, whether it's the body healing itself, whether it's pregnancy, and medicalizing it to no end.
I know, it's not a disease, everybody. Pregnancy is not a disease.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
It's, that one drives me crazy too, and it's easy to see too, because you look at public hospitals and you got often 15 to 30% cesarean rates. You go to private ones and you're like 30 to 50%. Then you go to countries like Denmark, who last I read, this was like a decade of book. I read a book called The Thinking Woman's Guide to Pregnancy. It was a great book. I remember I was like shocked by it. I remember checking all the citations.
Oh, wow.
I think it said, and somebody should check this, I think it said something like only 6 or 7% of women in Denmark get a cesarean. And at least back then, at least when the book was written, about a third had their babies at home. A third had them at like these birthing centers, kind of like home, and only a third in the hospitals of high risk. And they had better maternal and infant outcomes than the United States. And so you're like, whoa, what's that? What is driving that differential?
We've done similar things to midwifery that we've done with naturopathic medicine and other, forms. Do you know that at one point the AMA had actually a council called, it was like an investigation on quackery or council on quackery. It was like in the 50s.
Really?
I just like evaded me the name of it.
An investigation on quackery.
So it was basically looking into any form of like medicine, like midwifery, eclectic medicine, which we'll talk about, and naturopathy. Anything like that was just considered. Like there was one guy in the 50s, I'm forgetting these names, but he was the editor of the AMA's medical journal. And that's when they started using the term quackery for medicine and just sort of doing this big public campaign against the medicine. And so at one point, there were 40,000 naturopaths in the United States, and there were 70,000 members of the AMA. So look at that. That was a healthy ratio of naturopathic doctors. But of course, when we're talking about what happened, like with the calomel and all the mercury and all
that
these,
like in the 50s?
Yes. No, that was like in the early 1900s.
Early 1900s.
And then so that after the Flexner report is when they started shutting all of those down. So basically, there was a company named Farber that found out in the early 1900s that you could take petroleum feedstocks and make synthetic medications. So the first pharmaceutical companies, like even Eli Lilly, they were all making medicines out of botanicals and minerals. So they would initially. So they would even send, they would have expeditions to different countries and learn about what indigenous healers or herbs and stuff were using. And all those little pills were first hand rolled and then machine rolled. And you can see old pictures of doctors' offices. That's what pharmacists were. They were compounders of medicines that came from plants and minerals. And then this chemical company, which according to sources, the same chemical company ended up making Zyklon B later on. So there was kind of this like defense/pharmacy connection.
Using the gas chambers, World War II. Yep.
So this company kind of partnered with Standard Oil and said, wow, we can kind of reshape this biomedical process. So they put together a report. They funded a report that basically, they created a new CME, Council of Medical Education, and they said, only if you abide by this new form of medicine, these patent, they were called patent medicines. You can look at old catalogs. Only then will we fund these medical schools. So we went from 160 medical schools in the United States. This is a mix of naturopathic and conventional, to only 20.
And who said this?
So this is So this is in what funded the Flexner report. Carnegie was the one that was charged with doing this assessment of all the medical schools. So the AMA founded with money from the Standard Oil companies because they owned like a large percentage of all of the oil industry. When they found out that they could make these patent medicines, synthetic versions of these other medicines, they created a whole marketplace around
synthetic versions of the natural ones, the botanical, the mineral ones. This was in the early 1900s? Okay.
So then they said, well, the CME can't do this. So they had Carnegie Foundation do this research study looking at medical education. So here are the new standards. Anything that does botanical medicine is quackery. Pharmaceutical companies had to totally pivot. They no longer could have botanicals as their main, medicines anymore. It changed pharmacy completely. I mean, this is 100 years of history from the 1800s.
Yeah.
So I'm truncating a lot of it, of course.
Well, I mean, look, the ability to patent something versus it being naturally sourced, you could see you see that today. I mean, pharmaceutical companies, for the most part, if they can't patent it, they're not interested in selling it.
And I'm not against, and neither is naturopathy,
Typically.
yes, against patented medications, synthetic medications, but to thwart people, patients, doctors, pharmacists' ability to have access to these other medications, that is where the problem lies. Because a true free open market, then just let people have what they want. Let the market decide.
Right. I get the part I didn't understand is, so there were all these so who was funding the medical schools? And then how did 100 medical schools lose funding?
So the American Medical Association they kind of pivoted towards because they were getting funding from the Standard Oil and Farber came together, and they put over $160 million in all of education, including medical education, up until the 1960s. And that is when they
they were the benefactors of this whole system.
Yes, so they were the ones. So the schools just got all this funding, and then they wouldn't fund anything for naturopathic, all the homeopathic. They're also all but one of the Black medical colleges closed. The female-only medical colleges closed. I think there was one homeopathic college left standing back then, and literally no more naturopathic. Then, Benedict Lust, who brought naturopathic medicine from Europe to America, he founded the first health food store as well. It was a Knipe store in New York. And he married this lady, Louisa Lust, who had worked with another one of the early kind of European naturopaths that were the foundation for all of this. So they brought it to the United States and started opening colleges. Then there was another gentleman who was a traditionally trained heroic medicine doctor who founded the first eclectic medical school in New Jersey. And so the eclectics were sort of the medical doctors who were starting to say there's a better way. Those schools all got shut down too. So what modern naturopathic medicine today is sort of a mix from those early eclectic medical schools that got shut down from the Flexner Report, the homeopathic ones that got shut down, the midwives, and what you have today in naturopathy is sort of a blend of all that.
Mm. Would you say most naturopathic school, I guess, let's just say practitioners follow this model?
I would say they
on the
do,
screen?
But I will say, and this is going to be controversial, is that there is a lot of pressure on all organizations, and schools need funding. And so I have a personal observation that there is a bigger spectrum, and that's fine. People can choose we'll take vaccines. Early on, I would say most naturopathic doctors were not really pro-vaccine, but pro-choice for vaccine. And because they want vaccines to have more rigorous testing. But now you'll see kind of a little bit more of a spectrum. But it's just a sample of where we are as a culture, I guess. I think there's more, I try to not put my I'm not the doctor, I just publish. So I publish whatever doctors do, and they can publish their case because it's a record, right? It's a record of what they did with a patient. But there'll probably be some people who are like, why are you on this podcast?
Why?
Well, just because there's a lot of, you have to sort of be, there's a lot of fear if you don't play with the, you know what I mean? There's fear of speaking out sometimes.
On that score.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if I think that Americans are waking up.
Oh, they absolutely
are.
And
I think that everybody who adds their voice on this, anybody who's scared about what's being said here, that's freedom of speech, and they should add their voice. And trust me, they do.
They do.
And they do, and they've got the run of it for the most part. So, you only have to censor the truth because that's all you got to be scared of. People have to censor stuff that's crazy or not true.
Yeah.
The 7 I can't believe it's only 7, by the way. I would have thought it was so much more. The 7 naturopathic schools that are out there, do they receive money from, pharma companies and big medical establishment, the big industry at this point?
No, not that I'm aware of.
No?
I'm not aware of it. It's usually just private funding. So, I mean, yeah, if there's some benefactor out there that wants to go open a bunch of naturopathic schools, go do it, please. There's people that want this medicine,
Yeah. Well, our firm gets calls all the time from parents who are irate that their pediatrician or family doctors kick them out of the practice because they don't want to take even sometimes just one vaccine, right? They just don't want that one or this one or whatever. And we want to sue them. I want to sue my doctor. And I often say to them, I say, look, they're a private actor, and as long as they're not taking government money, just like you want freedom, they want freedom. I said, why do you want to go to a doctor whose views you don't agree with
Right.
and force them to treat your child? I'm like, I think that's a great idea. Okay, I'm not talking about any advice I've given to any particular. I just generally state that. I say that all the time. And instead I said, find a doctor whose views you agree with. I said, that's how the market works. And then give them your dollars. Why give your dollars to somebody that you don't agree with? What are you doing? It's just like with schools. The private school won't accept my child because they're not vaccinated. Go to a different private school. Give them your money. Why do you want people who are so fundamentally disagree with, have different views about things, educating your kid anyway? Go to a different private school that is in accord with your beliefs, where you actually might have some respect for those who run the school, who don't, make decisions in any event. I'm going to go down that road. So we often will tell folks, just in your state, look for a functional medicine doctor, a naturopathic doctor, or even any other kind of MD or DO that is in accordance with your belief, when there are many of them.
There are. And I think more patients and parents that go and seek that out, then it gives more of a market for other doctors who want to be more free in the way they practice and have more of a more complete doctor-patient relationship. So it's sort of like the more people that eat, buy grass-fed beef, the more farmers and ranchers can
sell it. The lower the cost, the more it goes down, the more it replaces the market. Do you remember when there was the mask mandate on planes? And do you remember when the government lifted it, there was a few airlines that said, we're going to continue the mask mandate.
Right.
Do you remember that?
I do.
It was like, I forgot which ones. And then they dropped it like a day or two later or something like that, because a few didn't. And where were all those customers going? They're going to go to the airlines where they didn't have to wear a face diaper. You want to wear a face diaper? I support your right to do it. Wear 5 of them.
Right.
Be my guest.
Right.
Wear like 6 of them. I don't care. But you know what I mean? Nobody should be compelled to do it. In any event, the market corrected for that fast. And it's, and in this area, it would correct too. And, so that's an encouragement to all the families out there, as well as to actually doctors out there I can't tell you how many doctors I meet who will quietly tell me they support the work that my firm, I do on behalf of some of the, in particular, ICANN nonprofit with regards to vaccine policy. They have looked themselves carefully at the underlying stuff, and it's there's a problem, but they will never speak publicly about it.
No.
Because it'll do what? It'll hurt their career. Well, here's what I'll say to all those folks: there is another career. There's a career in being in having a medical model that's modeled after that, right? Where you start with root causes, more broadly, and obviously even more specifically. I'm not saying don't even give vaccines. I'm saying, but respect people's choices about whether they want to or not, and don't bully, don't gaslight them, and treat them well.
Prevent a doctor from being able to practice the way they want as well, too. That's just...
And when a parent comes to you and says, my kid was in a car accident and their head hurts, or my kid was exposed to this, house cleaning product and my kid took a vaccine, you'll treat all 3 of those the same.
Yeah.
Right? Those will all be the same for you, which means you will just treat what is before you and you will look for what was the cause. And if the parent is telling you it was the vaccine right after the vaccine, take it seriously. Don't gaslight them and throw them out of your office.
And, there's still like emergency medicine surgeons. There's specialties that are very much needed. So I just want to, I'm not here against that. But again, it's just that choice, especially with chronic illness. We don't have a lot of answers in conventional medicine for chronic illness. And even some of the integrative things are there's this thing called green allopathy where it's like, okay, well, I'm still kind of treating this in a myopic way. Like instead of giving you this drug, I'm going to give you this supplement. That's where this is so beautiful, the foundation and the therapeutic order of naturopathic medicine, because it looks at the whole person.
Well, obviously, my comments apply differently depending on what kind of medicine we're talking about. I mean, if you break your bone, you're going to an orthopedic surgeon.
See.
That's just going to be straight up on the physical ailment right there, and that needs to be set. And then the body will do what? Do they put glue in there? Is it crazy glue? No, the body will heal, but you want it set so that when it heals, it connects to the right spot. So, that's obviously is a spectrum there.
I mean, there's a trend even in there are some naturopathic doctors that some of their main specialty is helping people prepare for surgery and heal for surgery. I even know some people who, when people go through plastic surgery, they go to their naturopathic doctor before and after because it's going to help their body heal. You know what I mean? It's just, it can fit nicely into any aspect of that chart right there.
Well, I think I'm hopeful that we've made. Well, you've persuaded me. I was already persuaded, but you have further persuaded me about why naturopathic doctors as a group, and obviously I have definitely met a naturopathic doctor or one more than one that. I felt like my discussions with them were like talking to just your typical allopathic MD.
There are some of them.
I've met more than one because especially in Arizona, there's many naturopathic doctors. And I've met MDs who are, they're this to almost a T. They're always looking for root causes. They'll go in and they'll want to test everything and see what is the cause of the dysfunction. And some of them even approach it as, which is that, where if you've got 4 things going on, and even if I can address 1 or 2 and I can figure those out, the body then has the capacity to heal the rest of them, right? The body has the ability to do that, depending on what it is, obviously, and what's causing the dysfunction. So it's not to say that every naturopathic doctor is going to be great and follow this model. And it's not to say that every MD is not. It really is doctor by doctor. Functional medicine doctors like MAPS doctors who are amazing. Dr. James Newton-Schwander, who's the head of MAPS. He's amazing. I mean, that's his, and he's an MD, right? He's an MD. I mean, his whole thing, is looking for root causes. That's what he does.
Root causes. And then if we look at what's really popular in medicine now, like peptides and stuff, if you go and start on a peptide stack, but you don't have the foundation, you don't have, it's just important for everything. Mm-hmm. No matter what it is, you have to have the body supported. You have to think of yourself as an entire person that's connected to this world. Like those children's books, they'll show like a child in their room and then it'll show their house and it shows their neighborhood. And, it's like we're connected. We're connected to the earth through electromagnetic fields and what we eat and how we interact with each other. And there's just no way around it. It's kind of like one time I went to a gas station and my car was a diesel. And it was one of those places where they fill up. It's not far from here where they still pump your gas for you. And they put the wrong kind of gas in the car. And my car didn't go very far after that. Oh. That was a big mess. But it's like that biocompatibility, I think. It's like start with things that are the most biocompatible. And I just think that not everything's right for every person, but we just do have this kind of cycle of things in history. And we've talked about a lot of them today where those people are persecuted. Dr. Lust, who brought naturopathic medicine to the United States, he went to osteopathic school. He went to eclectic medical school. He got his MD in New Jersey. He studied homeopathy. He did it all. And then after that whole Flexner report we talked about, he was arrested 12 times for doing things like saunas and like Wim Hof method. You know what I mean? So the persecution of doctors throughout history or other healers, midwives, things like that, just because they aren't helping fuel the machine, so to speak, is just a pervasive, it just keeps going in cycles.
And the most upside down part of it is they'll argue to you, to protect you, I'm going to take away your ability to have a midwife attend your birth, or even a doula in some places attend with you to protect you. Well, I want to make that choice. Let me make that choice, let the market correct for it. But
I think it was on LinkedIn, one of your posts.
Because it's nothing to do with protecting you. It's about protecting their guild and their interest. That's really what it is.
I think it was one of your LinkedIn posts. Was it yesterday? That someone had said something like, well, there's a reason why we have mandates because of seatbelts. And I just said the stupidest thing, but I was like, well, we don't inject a seatbelt in our body, right? You know what I mean? But it's just like, I don't understand even if you're right and I'm wrong, let me have my freedom to live my life the way I want to. Let me approach my health in the way that I want to. And let my doctors collaborate with me in the way that I consent to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate you sitting down with me.
I really am grateful for the time.
And is there anything else the world should know about naturopathic medicine or doctors that you want to share?
Well, that we're in a time that they need your support. They go to a very expensive school. And if this is something that resonates with you, go seek out a naturopathic doctor or talk to somebody who might want to explore that kind of education, because it's something that doesn't have every answer, but it's a very important piece we've seen throughout history. It's just been called different things. And I would say that, exercise, you're right, it's kind of like voting with your dollars, Yeah.
Yeah. And to be clear, you're not anti-medicine.
No.
Right? You're just saying, I want to give this also as an option.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I've had times in my life where I've needed medicine.
It's like you're saying you want to eliminate everything else? No,
absolutely not.
I'm just saying give people choice, right?
Absolutely.
So that brings us full circle to where we started. Just give people choice. Maybe they just want to live the way people, lived before there was a whole kind of slew and onslaught of man-made insults that we experience today.
That's so true.
Well, I appreciate you coming down, and I agree. I hope people will take that to heart, especially before you call me again. Anybody out there, before somebody calls me and says, my doctor doesn't want to see my kid, look up a naturopathic doctor, or look up a functional medicine doctor, or look up, somebody that's, and go see them. And maybe you'll even get better medical care as well.
I think so. And we have 21 years of those case reports if anyone wants to explore them.
Okay, what was that website again?
It's NDNR.com. It stands for Naturopathic Doctor News and Review. And then that's who we are. And we publish the Journal of Applied Natural Medicine.
Love it. All right, thanks again.
Thanks, Aaron.
Appreciate it.